Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna and a very warm good evening to everyone. I'm coming back to Rishikesh after 12 years and I see a world of difference. It's nice seeing so many spiritual seekers here, but also I'm a little disappointed to see the kind of commercialization that has happened. It's quite unrecognizable. And the crowds that are coming here, even till a short time ago, only genuine spiritual seekers would come here. And everything was so nice. And before 2012, the last time I came was in 1987. And that was even more blissful. It was in the bank of the Ganga at somewhere down at the entrance of the city. But everything has changed a lot. When we were driving down from Delhi to here, as we entered into the Rishikesh or Haridwar area, it seemed like time had come to a stop, but not for reasons that we generally associate with this term. When you're in a fantasy land and you are really impressed with something, you don't want that time to pass. You see, as time had stopped. But here the time was stopping for a different reason. The GPS in our car was showing that we were gradually getting closer. The number of kilometers to the destination was reducing, but the time was the same. So it was 1 hour when we were a certain number of kilometers away. When we were 5 kilometers closer, it was still the same time because there was so much traffic ahead. Eventually we managed to reach here. So lesson to learn, never travel here on a weekend. So anyway, I hope all of you are having a very spiritually rejuvenating experience here despite all the crowds and the traffic and the pollution and whatnot. You know, when we come to holy places, to spiritual places, one who is genuinely seeking spiritual life will try to not get carried away by the externals of the disturbances that come. There will be many types of disturbances, the noise and everything else. But try to not focus on all of that. Just try to keep it out of your mind. There are other things, the real holy place, the real spiritual place, which is here for the asking, for the seeking. This morning I went to the bank of the Ganga to do some chanting and just to sit there and absorb. So many tourists coming, shouting, screaming. So I was thinking, this is not the Rishikesh I knew. But nevertheless, there is a deeper Rishikesh, a deeper Ganga. that is there for us to explore only if we just carefully remove that external covering that is disturbing us. The sound and the pollution and the people and all of that. So I hope and pray that you will also have this nice experience of being able to penetrate the external disturbance and trying to go into the essence of what this place really is. It is a place that can enormously rejuvenate you. It is a place that has done so for millions and millions of seekers from time immemorial. India has always been known as a land of spirituality. And for many, many years, centuries, people have been coming here looking for something spiritual, looking for God. And they have never been disappointed because there's such a wide variety of spiritual experiences available here and non-spiritual experiences as well. And despite all the materialism and westernization that has afflicted India of late, there is still a very deep undercurrent of spirituality that is here. And if you just remain patient and tolerant and just go through this experience without getting unduly perturbed about all these other things, your stay here, your visit will be enormously enriching. In the Vedic scriptures, India is called Bharat Varsha. It's called the land of piety, the land of spirituality. India, of course, now there are geographical boundaries based on political developments of the last, few centuries or few decades. But when we speak of Bharat Varsha, we're speaking of a broader geographical area. But even if one considers what is the geographical boundary of the country that we call India today, or Bharat, it is full of holy places, of holy forests, of holy mountains, of holy rivers and lakes, of very ancient temples, of a very rich legacy of great saints and spiritualists who have left behind an enormous treasure trove of experience and knowledge for all of us to benefit from. So that is still here. It is there. And when we come here, we can't but fail to be touched by the ambience, the spiritual ambience of this place. I come from the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Our founder, Srila Prabhupada, used to say that when you come to the Himalayas, you can't help but be spiritual. Because that is the ambience of this place. That is the power, the spiritual potency that is inherent in this place. This morning I made a very spontaneous, brief podcast when I went there and I saw all these other people coming. And I said in that podcast, look, there are enough places all over where people can go to drink alcohol and they can go to eat all sorts of, things and do bungee jumping and rafting and whatever else they want to do. Why come to the spiritual places? We don't go to your liquor bars. We don't go to your discotheques. We don't go to your movie theaters. Why do you come here and bother us? You do your thing where you want to do it. Let us be here. If you come here, respect the place. Respect the sentiments of the place. Respect the purpose for which this place exists, which is to assist us in our spiritual development and the unfolding of the spiritual potential within us. So in India, we have this multitude of places from the southern tip to the northeastern tip to the northern tip to the western tip and all through. even after so many years of being a spiritual seeker, I haven't covered many places still. Because there are so many places to cover. And amongst all the different holy places, the rivers are also very prominent. The spiritual rivers, the holy rivers. So when I was told today by the devotees here that they asked me if I could speak on Ganga, why Ganga is so special, the river, I was very happy because about 7 or 8 years ago in London I had given a similar series of lectures on the sacred rivers of India. And it's always a very pleasant topic to speak on. So let's take a brief look into that. Before we get into Ganga specifically, I'll just talk about rivers in general for a short time, just for a few minutes, and then come into Ganga and speak about the sacred rivers of India, and then come to Ganga specifically. Of course, because of limitations of time, I'll try to be brief. So, okay, I think I have to adjust my position a little bit. Okay, so that's the topic. Why is Ganga so special? So today we don't have the series, we only have just a brief introduction. Now, this is a famous verse in Sanskrit. Gange cha yamune chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalesmin Sannidhim Kuru. You know, when we perform worship, then we need pure water. We need pure everything. We need a pure mind, you need pure clothes, you have to have a bath, you have to have clean clothes. The place where you sit has to be clean, everything around you has to be clean. Cleanliness is next to godliness. And I wish people in many of the holy places here would understand that. This morning as I was making my podcast, some tourists came along, just threw some litter somewhere. And I almost stopped my podcast to tell them to pick it up and take it away. So how can one be spiritual without being clean? So we want everything that is very pure. So the water for worship also has to be pure. But pure not just materially in the sense that it doesn't have any dust and dirt and all of that, but we mean purity from a spiritual point of view. All the sacred rivers of India, they are considered in the Vedic scriptures to be spiritual water. It's not ordinary water. So when we need water for worship, then we invoke the presence of some of these holy rivers by chanting a mantra. And this is one of those mantras. And we mention the names of 7 of the sacred rivers of India. There are many more, as we'll see a little in a few minutes. So Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu and Kaveri. So these are 7 very prominent sacred rivers in India. And Jalesmin Sannidhim Kuru, so we say, we request, we petition the goddesses of these rivers, please enter into these waters, or enter into this water that I am going to use for my worship. And then by spiritual potency, because of prayer being sincere, then at the spiritual platform, these rivers kindly enter into that pure water, or water to make it pure. So, you know, rivers everywhere are so important. All over the world, historically, civilizations have arisen on the banks of rivers for obvious reasons, because people needed food to survive, and agriculture needs water, plenty of it. So water is always amply provided by rivers. So civilizations grew ordinarily, easily on the banks of rivers, whether it was the Nile in Africa, or whether it was the Amazon in South America, whether it was the Mississippi in the Northern American continent, or the Danube or the Rhine and so on, wherever, all these other places, Volga and Civilizations have grown up around rivers. Sitting on the bank of a river, even any river, is quite a soothing experience. And I'm sure all of you have experienced that. Actually, being in the presence of any water body is a very good experience. And so water is a kind of an opulence, unless it's in excess. If you're in the middle of an ocean and there's a storm, then it's not a very pleasant experience. But when you're sitting on the shore of the sea and just watching the waves coming in and going out and the endless expanse of water, it's such a calming experience. Similarly, sitting on the bank of a river, even generally is a very nice experience. And plus, they perform such a great function for the survival of all life forms on earth. If it wasn't for these rivers, it would be very hard for life to survive as we know it. So rivers are everywhere. And every country, every civilization understands the need to protect rivers. Even from an ecological or environmental point of view, we've all understood how these mountains and rivers are so critical for our survival and for good quality of life. So just as there are rivers all over the world and they've been considered very useful, maybe not sacred, except in maybe a few very ancient communities, but generally these rivers have been considered useful. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been that level of sacredness or sanctity that is associated with these rivers, as we find in India. So in India, we have these multiple rivers. From the southern tip to the northern tip and east to west, you'll find all these rivers. And all of them have some reference in the scriptures. And there are some of the other enormously spiritually enlivening stories and messages connected with them. Each of them. Amongst all these rivers, actually Ganga is considered the foremost. All are sacred, all are transcendental, but Ganga is the most important. That's the verse again. Will you want to chant with me? Gange cha yamune chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalesmin Sannidhim Kuru. So now all the holy rivers have manifested here. You see, on the spiritual platform, it doesn't depend on the limitations imposed by space and time in our bodily existence. The spiritual realm is something quite different. It doesn't need validation by our senses. It doesn't have to be proven empirically by scientific observation and proof and so on and so forth. So from the famous Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a very important scripture, a devotional text. We have a purport from Srila Prabhupada, our founder, who says, many sages, including Shankaracharya, have composed prayers of the Ganges, and the land of India itself has become glorious because such rivers as the Ganges, Yamuna, Godavari, Kaveri, Krishna, and the Narmada flow there. Anyone living on the land adjacent to these rivers is naturally very advanced in spiritual consciousness. So that is the spiritual benefit of residing in this land. Nowadays, India, of course, is obsessed with software and cricket and what else, Bollywood and things like that. But that's not really what India is meant for. India is meant for being a beacon light for spirituality for the whole world. And that's why even if you get people who externally act in a very materialistic way, you just scratch the surface and you'll find something spiritual in them. Because of being born in this land, because of because of being adjacent to some of these holy rivers, the holy mountains, the holy places, and so on. So there is an effect that is there. So these holy places and the rivers like Ganga are so powerful. Even the birds and the animals and the insects living in the vicinity derive spiritual benefit. And there is a great likelihood that these entities may be reborn in the next life as human beings and get a chance to continue their spiritual journey, which takes many lifetimes. Another 2 verses from the Bhagavatam. Now there's a long list of rivers. We needn't read that. It'll take too long. So these rivers, I'm putting them here just to tell you that there are innumerable such rivers here, small and big. And over the thousands of years, many have dried up, are not visible. Some have changed course. So they may not exactly be identifiable to us today, but they are there historically recorded. So I'll read the second half of it, which says, India used to be called Bharatvarsha. The inhabitants of Bharatvarsha are purified because they always remember these rivers. Sometimes they chant the names of these rivers as mantras, and sometimes they go directly to the rivers to touch them and bathe in them. Thus the inhabitants of Bharatvarsha become purified. So these rivers and these holy places are so pure that the moment you come in contact with them, there is some purification of the heart. There is some awakening of spiritual consciousness that comes automatically, even without realizing it. And how does one contact these holy rivers like the Ganga? One obvious way is by physical contact. One may go and sip some water from the Ganga. One may touch the water of the Ganga. One may actually go there and take a dip and bathe in the Ganga. And by the way, when one bathes in these holy rivers, it shouldn't be in a mood of frivolity. You know, when people want to have fun, they go into a swimming pool, they jump and they splash water, and you know, people want to have fun in the water. That's not the mood. Thank you. That's not the mood in which one should bathe in these holy rivers. It has to be done in a very devotional mood, in a very spiritual mood. Actually, one is first expected to offer full obeisances to the river and to the goddess of the river, praying for her mercy. And then very respectfully and devotionally, we gently enter into the river, bit by bit. Actually, the devotees, those who are spiritually minded, don't like to touch their feet to the water of the river. But you can't do it, you can't bathe unless you go in. So we beg forgiveness. Because in Vedic culture, you see, you're not supposed to touch your feet to sacred things. So if it's some devotional paraphernalia, some worship, anything sacred, you try to not touch your foot. So much so that you don't even touch anybody else with your feet. So let's say you're walking by, there's so many people sitting here. If I'm walking by and mistakenly my foot touches your body, I would immediately touch your body and touch it to my head and say, because touching your foot there is considered not very respectful. So in any case, because there is no choice, we have to take a bath like that. Or else you can just sprinkle water on the head. But if you do want to take a bath, then you offer prayers, and then you enter in, go up to your waist, and go up and down 3 times in the water, praying. And then if you like, you can swim a little bit to get some exercise. And there is a lot of worship that can be done of the water of the Ganga also. So that's one way, you physically contact the Ganga and such sacred rivers. Another way, as is mentioned in this verse here, is that you may chant mantras containing their names, like the mantra that we just chanted, Gange cha Yamune chaiva, yes? So when you chant the names of these rivers, that sound itself is very purifying. Just reciting that name, Ganga, Ganga, that according to the scriptures is very purifying. Shall we say it? Ganga, Ganga, Ganga. Yes? The etymology of it is Gam, Ga. Gam coming down and flowing downwards. So in Sanskrit, it's composed of two parts, Gam and Ga. So when you combine these two, it becomes Ganga. So it means that which flows downwards. So from that point of view, from a grammatical point of view, any river that flows down from a hill and flows into the sea can be called Ganga. But specifically, it is Ganga, this Ganga river that has this name. So just by chanting this Ganga, even if you can't, if you're staying far away from Ganga, you may be in another country or another part of the same country where Ganga is not present. If you just chant Ganga, Ganga, according to the scriptures, you get the benefit of being with Ganga. So on the spiritual platform, as I mentioned earlier, space and time do not matter. What to speak of chanting? Even if you remember in your mind Ganga, just remember your experience, just close your eyes and remember when you were in Rishikesh, you saw the Ganga flowing and you just remember that and you remember the name Ganga. Even that is purifying. So there is evidence from the scriptures for all of this. So just imagine if one is regularly residing here without committing offenses, without committing activities that are offensive to the goddess Ganga and to the holy places here and to the memory of the great saints who have lived here from time immemorial, then we will get enormous benefit. So in another verse it is said, all these rivers are transcendental. You know the meaning of the word transcendental? Transcend means to go beyond. To go beyond what? To go beyond matter, material things. So when we want to say spiritual, another synonym is transcendental. Because spiritual means that which is beyond the material, that which is beyond matter. We have experience of matter all around us. But what we are seeking is a genuine experience of something spiritual. So transcendental. So all these sacred rivers are capable of giving us that transcendental experience because they are transcendental. Only that which is transcendental can give you a transcendental experience. A material object cannot give you a transcendental experience. When Srila Prabhupada went to America in the 1960s, that was the time when the hippie movement was going on very strongly. And people used to take a lot of intoxicants, drugs, LSD and so many things like that. And when they got into an intoxicated state, which they called a high, they thought that was a spiritual experience. So Srila Prabhupada said, this is the last thing that can be called spiritual. In fact, it can never be called spiritual. Because intoxication makes you forget the reality of your existence and anything higher than that. It just makes you live in a dream world of illusion. It pushes you deeper into ignorance. It doesn't awaken you to any higher stage of enlightenment, as is falsely believed by some people. So that doesn't give any spiritual realization at all. It only takes our consciousness further down. So anyone who wants to progress in spiritual life must be very careful about this point and must completely avoid in any form of intoxication. If that's what we want, if we don't want it, if we don't want spiritual life, then people will seek everything else. But if one wants genuine spiritual experience and actual happiness, then one has to do what it takes. So, only spiritual things can give us a spiritual experience, and these sacred rivers are like that. And therefore, as this says, one can be purified by remembering those rivers like the Ganga. Purified of what? Purified of all material desires. purified with a desire to have intoxication, to have various forms of worldly experiences, and so on and so forth. And by being in touch or contact with them in the ways that I mentioned earlier, one can actually get transcendental experience. Although, please remember, it is not only that is responsible for our spiritual progress. We also have to do accompanying spiritual practices which are enhanced in their potency to give results when they are performed in holy places like this. For example, we chant the holy names of Lord Krishna. So when we come to a holy place like this, sit on the bank of the Ganga and we chant the names of Lord Krishna, then that has so much more potency. And the mind is so much more easily able to focus on this chanting. So a little bit of geography, spiritual geography. So the Ganga originates at a place called Gangotri. Now what I'll be doing is to give you just a brief picture, one picture of each of the important holy rivers in India. Okay? All of which are spiritual, transcendental. So this is the origin of the river Ganga. I'll show you more pictures later, at a place called Gangotri. Have any of you been to Gangotri?
Yes.
You have? Okay. It's a little difficult to go to. In 2012 when we went to, then there was some landslide and access was blocked. We couldn't go at that time. Then this is another sacred river called Yamuna, which originates at a glacier or a place called Yamunotri. So Ganga comes from Gangotri geographically, and Yamuna comes from Yamunotri. So the Yamuna and Ganga meet up at a place called Prayag, very famous place nowadays, also known as Allahabad, Prayag. And Yamuna is also very loved by devotees of Lord Krishna, because Lord Krishna in Vrindavan performed many of his pastimes over there. So Yamuna is next to Ganga. Yamuna is the most famous river in India. And then we have the Godavari, which is in central and western India, and she flows down towards southern India. We don't have time, of course, to discuss each of these rivers, but I'm just making a mention of the river, showing you a picture and telling you the rough area where it is in. And then we'll go on to Ganga at the end of it. Saraswati River near Badrinath. Any of you been to Badrinath? Further, much further north from here. I think it's not open yet. It'll open in May, probably. It's open only from May to November. And there's a risk in going there. And the risk, many people think when I say this, is probably a risk that there are steep cliffs and a little miscalculation where the driver can send you way down. That kind of risk is there, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the risk that you like the place so much you won't want to come back. You'll want to stay there forever. So this is a warning to all of you who have any attachment to your homes and the places where you come from, before you go to these places. So Saraswati is a mystical river, not much visible now in this age. Narmada in central India, another very powerful holy river. Sindhu in the Karakoram range in current-day geographical Pakistan. It starts from the Himalayas and flows via India into the current area of Pakistan and leads out into the Arabian Sea. Kaveri River in South India. On the banks of the Kaveri River are numerous holy places. Many, many great saints have lived on its banks, on her banks, for millennia. The Brahmaputra River in the northeastern part of India. The Krishna River in another southern Indian state called Karnataka. The Mahanadi River in eastern India, in a state called Orissa. Tungabhadra river in southern India, connected very much to the pastimes of Lord Ram. You all heard of Ram? When Ram was in exile in the forest, he stayed in Hampi, and so that's not too far from where this river is. And this is in Nepal, the Gandaki river. It arises in Nepal and comes into India. And this is in western India, where hundreds of thousands of pilgrims gather to bathe in her waters on certain specific occasions. Damodar River in eastern India. This is one of the few rivers which are masculine. Most of the rivers are feminine. So Damodar and Brahmaputra also, they are masculine. Otherwise, all the major rivers in India are feminine. They have goddesses. Payaswini River in the deep south of India, in Kerala. Such pristine beauty. The Tapti River in central India. The Kosi River coming from Nepal and then coming into India from there. The Sarayu River, on the banks of which Lord Ram was born. Okay, so that said, let's come to Ganga now. So we've given you a background of all these holy rivers, and Ganga is definitely the most important amongst them by far. And a brief look at the geography of the Ganga is very interesting. You see, all these rivers, Ganga has so many tributaries that join her. As she cascades down the slopes of the Himalayas, starting from the Gangotri, and she moves into the plains and meanders around to meet the Bay of Bengal, many tributaries join her, and her flow increases enormously. And when she reaches a place, that region near the ocean, then she starts spreading out into distributaries. To let me revise your geography lessons from school. A tributary is a stream of water that meets a river. And a distributary is when a river then branches out into other smaller rivers. So the tributaries come at the beginning and the middle of the river, and the distributaries come at the end when it meets the sea. So this entire thing is a Ganga system. So you can see that in the blue, how the Ganga system has spread all over. So people residing on the banks of these are very, very fortunate. And if they take advantage of this and actually take it seriously, then they can make enormous spiritual advancement. Okay, now, very interesting. Look at the top of this picture. There are 4 places: Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath, Badrinath. They are high up in the Himalayas. And generally, any spiritual aspirant wants to go there, to these places, because they are so inspirational. Anyone who goes there can't help but come back a changed person, if that person has gone there in the right consciousness. So, in blue, you see the Ganga. Yes? But actually, the Ganga starts from Gangotri. Yes? You see the second from left on the top, Gangotri? That is where the Ganga starts from. But she's not called Ganga there. She's called Bhagirathi, for reasons that I'll explain shortly. And then she comes and meets these other rivers. Which are these other rivers? Now look at the top right, Badrinath, a very famous holy place. There's a river that starts from there called Alakananda. Do you see that written there? And Alakananda, when you go to Badrinath and Yamunotri also, the river is ice cold. But there are also springs which are boiling hot. And it is a custom that whoever goes there must take bath in both. Now, since taking bath in that ice cold water is not easy, so what some creative and innovative spiritualists have done is they've got a pond where they mix the water from both. and kept it reasonably warm. So you have a nice sauna. So that is the favorite place for everybody when they go there because it's so cold. You know, in the Western countries, it gets much colder. But you have heating everywhere. Internally heating, your car is heated, your room is heated. You have those kind of jackets and whatever. But there in Badrinath, you don't have electric heaters. You don't get hot water so easily. When we went there in an ashram, and we lived there, and there was one man who was doing the service of heating up water for everyone to bathe in. So by the time he brought the water up in a bucket, it had become cold. It was boiling hot down there, but by the time he brought it up, it was still cold. So people like to go and bathe in that spring, which is mixed with hot water. So anyway, those places are very charming and they are full of histories. You'll need a few days minimum at each place with a very knowledgeable person to understand the deep history and significance of the whole place and also of the individual areas within that. So that is the Alakananda River, which is in blue. And joining the Alakananda River, there's one river that comes in from the right side. As you see it, it's on your right, Dhauli Ganga. Another one in the yellow, that is Nandakini. Another one in the green called Pindar Ganga. They join the Alakananda at different points. And from Kedarnath, which is a place of Lord Shiva, comes the Mandakini, and she also joins the Alakananda. So now you have these 4 confluences, meeting points of the different rivers, and each of these 4 confluences have got names. In Sanskrit, the word for a confluence is called Prayag. So these confluences have names like Vishnu Prayag and Karna Prayag, Rudra Prayag, Deva Prayag. Okay? So Deva Prayag is where the original Ganga, starting from Gangotri, comes and meets the Alakananda river, which herself has been joined by these other streams and rivers. So after Deva Prayag, then she flows as one whole Ganga. So actually Ganga begins from Gangotri, coming down as Bhagirathi, and then she joins the other river, and the rest of the river is called Ganga. Yes, you got the picture? That is how she flows down the Ganga. So this is an interesting geographical understanding of the place. And for those of you who may want to travel further north into the hills, this is just a brief background. So this is the place, Gomukh, Gangotri. In Gangotri there is a Gomukh. Gomukh means the mouth of a cow. It's shaped something like that, so that's why the name. Another view of Gomukh as the waters gush out from the glacier. The glacier is moving now, and you can hear cracking sounds. I haven't been there, but some people have been there. They say you can actually hear the cracking sounds of the glacier as there is some slight movement. So another view of Gomukh. See how much the terrain has become eroded, denuded. Another view of the Ganga at Gangotri. Most of us will probably not be able to go to these places. Therefore, I'm showing these pictures just to arouse your devotion and interest. Again, another view of the Ganga at Gangotri. Vishnu Prayag. Now I'm going to show you those confluences. Yes? The Alakananda and the Dhauli Ganga. Vishnu Prayag, Nanda Prayag, Karna Prayag. You don't have to remember the names, don't worry. I'm just showing you the confluence points of these rivers. Rudra Prayag, Dev Prayag. So this is the point where the Bhagirathi, the original Ganga, meets with the Alakananda river that has been joined by the tributaries. And from here, you have one Ganga that flows down. And that's the Ganga that we see here in Rishikesh. And going further down to Haridwar and then into the plains. From Haridwar, she enters into the plains. Hari Dwar. Hari is Lord Krishna. Dwar means gate. Rishikesh. Rishika is Lord Krishna, or rather our senses, and Isha means our senses. So Rishikesh is the name of Lord Krishna also. So originally the name of this place is Rishikesh with an H, but you'll often find the H missed and it's spelled as Rishikesh, which has a different meaning. Rishi means a sage and Kesh means the hair. So some people have twisted the word to mean the hair of a sage, but actually it is Rishikesh, meaning Lord Krishna's place, Lord Hari's place. Okay, so this is the place where these two rivers will meet. And at some of these prayags, you can distinctly see the two waters coming in with different colors. And then as they flow into the joint river, half of it is of one color, the other half of the other color. So this is Ganga at Rishikesh. Yeah, so the devotee who did this PPT for me also spelled it like this. And then as she flows down to the to Haridwar, this is where many thousands and thousands of people gather to perform ceremonies and to bathe and so on. And then as she flows down into the plains, she goes to Varanasi after passing through many, many other places. Many of you must have been to Varanasi already. Anyone? Yes. And then to the Triveni Sangam at Allahabad, Prayag, where Ganga meets the Yamuna. And you also have the Saraswati, which invisibly meets these two rivers. So Triveni refers to three rivers that meet here. One invisibly joining the other two. And then at a holy place called Mayapur in Bengal, in eastern India. Of course, that's, yeah. And then finally, as she enters into the ocean, that place is called Ganga Sagar, where Ganga meets the Sagar. Sagar means the ocean. And special festivals are held at certain times of the year. And hundreds of thousands of people gather here for this festival. It's called Ganga Sagar Mela that happens there. So you see all along the Ganga, from the beginning to the end, it's associated with all sorts of festivals and all sorts of spiritual practices that go on. And this is how Goddess Ganga has been depicted in some texts. Her carrier is an aquatic that resembles a crocodile. In Sanskrit, it's called a makara. And she's extremely beautiful, very divine. Her beauty is very pristine, very heavenly. And she has 4 arms, and she's extremely pure in every respect. And in one arm she has a lotus, in another arm she has a pitcher that has some nectar, and in the other 2 arms she has extended them, one to offer fearlessness and the other to offer blessings, benedictions. In the Vedic culture, especially when you look at divinities, you will find them, the deities, having different postures. So when this kind of posture is a blessing or of fearlessness. I award you fearlessness. That's so when you have a deity that does this, so you can see Ganga's right hand, she's awarding her devotees and her worshippers freedom from fear. Abhaya. So this is called the Abhaya Mudra. Abhaya means fearlessness and Mudra means a posture, a hand posture. So this Abhaya Mudra indicates that she is bestowing fearlessness upon her worshippers. And she also has a left hand like this. And this is called Varada Mudra. Vara means a benediction, Da means to give. So with this mudra or posture, she grants benedictions to devotees. Whatever you may seek from me, here I give you, I grant you your desires. So she has these 2 mudras like this. That is Ganga Devi. And because as she flows down from Gangotri till she enters the sea, she sustains innumerable life forms, not just human beings, innumerable life forms, aquatic and non-aquatic. And she nurtures us in every possible way. Materially, life exists because of Ganga and rivers like her. So the agricultural activities, drinking water, everything is possible. So she sustains us. She sustains us materially with her waters. But also, importantly, she sustains us spiritually. She is like a very kind mother. Although she is a very young looking mother, although she is very old. But goddesses don't grow old. Their skin doesn't get wrinkled. Their hair doesn't go white. They don't need walking sticks as they grow older. They remain youthful always. So Goddess Ganga is very old, but she's always youthful. And she's our mother. So because she sustains us, she nourishes us materially and spiritually. Just like when we were children, our respective mothers nourished us, protected us in every way, materially, and she gave us good values. You see, the father may be here and there, going here and there, but the mother is the one who actually looks after us. So Ganga is therefore called Mother. So in India, therefore, we call her Mother Ganga. And devotees and worshippers like to come and be embraced in the fold of her affectionate mercy. And those who develop this very loving and serving attitude towards Ganga will actually feel her embrace of motherly love as we go to her and we live and we perform spiritual practices. So not only does she nourish us materially, but she will nourish us, very importantly, spiritually as well. Now a little history, but I think we're running out of time, right? What was the time we said? We have till what time? 20 minutes more. Okay. So I'll be very brief about this pastime of how Ganga descended on earth. Okay. Now just to give you a brief spiritual cosmology. In the famous scripture, the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that our universe that we all see with our eyes, the stars and the planets and everything, is but one amongst unlimited number of such universes, each of which is material. And so the complete group of the material universes collectively is called the material world. And beyond this material world is a spiritual world, a world that is eternal, a world where nothing is ever destroyed. And in this material world, things are temporary. They go through a cycle of creation, maintenance, and destruction. But in the spiritual world, they always remain. Things are eternally existing over there. So in between the spiritual and material worlds, there is an ocean. It's also referred to as a river. It's called the Viraja. Now, there is a relation between that Viraja, which is also transcendental, and the Ganga. There was once an avatar or an incarnation of Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu, and he appeared as a dwarf student, a brahmachari. You can see him there seated on the throne with an umbrella. His name was Vamana or Vamana Dev, and he came at the assembly of a king called Bali or Bali Maharaj, and he asked him for some boons, because a king is supposed to be very big-hearted and grant to sages and students whatever they desire. So he asked him for 3 steps of land, And the king laughed at him and said, first of all, you're a dwarf. And secondly, you want only 3 steps of land. How much can you get? I'm a big king. I can give you whatever you like. He said, no, I just want 3 steps. So the king said, all right. So he expanded himself. And you can see that expanded form. With 1 step, he covered the higher planets. With the 2nd step, he covered the entire universe. And when he did so, his foot, the toe, pierced the covering of the universe. And through that universe, a drop of this Viraja river that separates the material and spiritual worlds fell in to the material world, into the universe. And that is the Ganga. So Ganga is pure because she has washed the lotus feet of God Himself in the form of Vamana. So the water came down, and then of course there was no place to keep the 3rd step. So he said, my dear king, you promised me 3 steps and I've only taken 2 and covered everything. So that means you're a liar because you are not keeping your promise. So then the king understood and he offered his head. He said, please keep your 3rd foot on my head, your 3rd step on my head. And the king became a great devotee. So that's how actually the Ganga came. And the Ganga is also in the higher planets of the universe. There was a time when there was a need for the Ganga to descend onto earth. Because there was a king called Sagar, whose 60,000 sons, these are pastimes, incidents that happened millions and millions of years ago, narrated in the scriptures. And they had let loose a horse. And the horse wandered into the ashram of a sage called Kapila, roughly near where the Ganga Sagar is, which is a picture for which I showed you some time ago, near the ocean. And the horse disappeared somewhere for a while, so the princes thought that this sage had deliberately stolen the horse. So they spoke aggressively to him in a demeaning way, and the sage looked at the arrogance of these princes and thought that they needed to be taught a lesson for their own benefit. So, just with a sound, he burnt them to ashes. And the ashes lay there on the ground for 60,000 princes, of all of them. When King Sagar heard about it, he was very unhappy. And then he performed penances for a long time, and he was told, I'm just summarizing the whole story, that only when Ganga comes down to earth and she contacts the ashes of your sons can they be delivered. So Maharaj, or the king Sagar, his great-grandson, whose name was Bhagirath, he finally performed, after many penances, managed to please Lord Shiva. Please come. He first petitioned Ganga. Ganga said, all right, I will come. But my flow will be so powerful that I'll just sweep away the entire earth. So I need someone who can stop my flow, control my flow as I fall onto the earth. And there's only one person who can do that, and that is Lord Shiva. So then Lord Shiva agreed after long penances performed by Bhagirath. And then he said, I'll hold her in the matted locks of my hair. So this is Sage Kapila burning the 60,000 suns. And the Bhagirath petitioning Ganga to appear, and she says, yes, I will come. But I have 2 problems. One is who will bear the force of my waters, and second, that I'm apprehensive that all kinds of sinful people will come and bathe in me to get rid of their sins, and I'll be overloaded with these sins. So Bhagirath petitioned Lord Shiva, and he said, then he told Mother Ganga, oh Mother, please don't worry. Lord Ganga will bear the force of your waters in his matted locks. And as far as the sinful people coming and bathing in your waters to relieve themselves of sin, don't worry about it, because when great saints come and bathe in your waters, they will nullify all the sins that have accumulated in your waters. So here is Lord Shiva as he accepts the flowing waters of the Ganga as they descend from the higher planets. And there is King Bhagirath. He had performed penances like a sage for many years. He's standing there welcoming Mother Ganga as she comes into the matted locks of Lord Shiva. And here is another pictorial depiction of that. And another brief pastime about how Ganga came to earth. And of course, then Ganga came, she fell from the Himalayas, and then she meandered all the way to the ocean. She contacted the ashes of the sons of Sagara, they became delivered. So here's another story, a pastime. Radha and Krishna, you've heard of them. One time Krishna was worshipping Radha on a special occasion in the holy month of Kartik, when both became so absorbed in each other, and all the great gods and all the great personalities and sages were worshipping them, and eventually they found a pool of water and a stream, because both Radha and Krishna had manifested into a liquid form, and that became the Ganga. So the combined liquid form of Radha and Krishna, therefore, is the Ganga. So these are the esoteric descriptions in scriptures about the origin of the Ganga. Another pictorial depiction of that. And this is in Mayapur, which I mentioned briefly. Mayapur, there is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Lord Krishna, who was manifested 500 years ago. And he bathed in the river Ganga. So Ganga Snan is a very, bathing in the Ganga is a very popular thing people do. And as I mentioned, it is also a custom that when people die, their relatives take their ashes and immerse them in the Ganga, because then their ashes will be purified and it will benefit that departed soul in his or her journey ahead in life, in the future lives. So people take their bath like this. It's very common to see that. You'll find many sages. Sometimes they drink the water. The water is considered pure. And it is said that because the water is spiritual, even though sometimes there may be flowers and garlands and some litter here and there, that doesn't in any way diminish the purity of the water. The water still remains transcendental. So therefore, faithful followers will bathe in the Ganga no matter what. And people worship Ganga in different ways. One of the ways they do it is to have a leaf cup, put a little lamp in it, or put some flowers in it, and let the cup float in the water, and then the cup floats down. It's a very pretty sight. Especially in Varanasi also you will see a lot of that. Because here the current is very strong, but in Varanasi it's a little nice. And also you offer the water of the Ganga back to the Ganga. That's also another form of worship of Ganga. And the Ganga Arati at Haridwar and also at Rishikesh here is a very famous event. Have any of you attended the Ganga Arati? All of you. It's a very nice experience. Arati is the worship. With different paraphernalia, you worship Ganga. So it's quite an experience. And if you haven't, I suggest you visit. Even in Rishikesh, it happens at a few places, right? So, which location exactly? Or Triveni Ghat. Okay, so you can see that. So river Ganga river as she flows. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much. Ganga. There's much more to say about Ganga. We'll try to leave some time for questions or comments if you have any. Hare Krishna. Any of you have any questions? Yes.
In that one picture that you showed with Radha and Krishna, I saw Lord Shiva there.
Yes.
What was the significance of him? I think he had inspired him to take that form.
Yes. It was a short narration that I gave. It's a long pastime. I just summarized it in a few sentences. But Lord Shiva is also a great devotee. And he was very keen to see the pastime between the divine couple, Radha and Krishna. So Radha is the original goddess and Krishna is the original Lord. And Lord Shiva worships them, and he was keen to see their pastimes. So he was also singing beautifully and glorifying Radha and Krishna. And many other saintly personalities came to that place and also were engaged in similar activities. And Radha and Krishna became so absorbed in that they forgot themselves. And in the ecstasy of the occasion, they melted into liquid forms. And that's how Ganga came. There's another explanation given in the scriptures. You must be a little careful though when you bathe, because the current is rather strong. Don't underestimate the current. It doesn't look so strong, but if you get in there, you can get a quick ticket to Calcutta if you're not careful. In Haridwar, they have these chains, metal chains on the bank so that you can hold on to it as you bathe. Yes? Just take a quick dip and then come out, because if you let go, even if you're a strong swimmer, the current is too strong. Just sweep you across. So the sheer majesty of Ganga and her glory is something that never ceases to amaze those who are genuine spiritual seekers, and they take shelter of her at any place. Okay, so let's say Ganga. 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 Hey Gange. The form of address. When you say Hey Gange, you say Oh. Hey is like saying Oh. And Gange, when you address, it becomes Ganga becomes Gange. So Hey Gange, like we say that. Okay, so I wish you all a very, very spiritually enlivening experience here. And I really want to thank our devotees here who have facilitated my stay and are looking after me as well. Hare Krishna, Prabhu has come all the way from the other temple, and Gopinath Prasad and Premamurti Prabhu and their good wives, and all of you who have come here, and you gave me an opportunity to speak something about Mother Ganga. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. And now you can enjoy some prasad. Yes, a quick question. Say that again? Yes. Yes, that's right. From a spiritual point of view, Yamuna is considered even more pure, and that is because Lord Krishna performed his numerous pastimes in the Yamuna river. Some of the most esoteric pastimes were performed by Krishna in the Yamuna from his childhood all the way up. So Yamuna has a very special significance for devotees of Lord Krishna. In one sense, Yamuna and Ganga are the same also. So there's a lot about that. Yamuna and Ganga in the spiritual world and how they met and so on and so forth. Okay? Yes.
My question is perhaps maybe ignorant question, I'm not so sure. As a kid, actually we were taught or we were explained Hari and Vishnu as a maintainer, Shiva as a sustainer, destroyer or recreator, and
Vishnu,
yeah.
Brahma is the creator.
Brahma is the creator, and Krishna is somehow Rupa of Vishnu or Hari. But how does Krishna is a Hari? Where is the confusion? There is always a confusing barrier between did Krishna take out, Krishna took avatar from a Vishnu, or what? Where is the timeline there?
Yeah. Actually, in each universe, you will have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And they are responsible for the functions, as you mentioned. The Vishnu who is present in this universe to maintain the universe also is an expansion of another form of Vishnu who also resides within the universe. And he is expansion of another form of Vishnu who is the source of all the universes. And that Vishnu comes from another form, who comes from another form, and from another form, and the origin of whom is Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. So that is what the Srimad Bhagavatam, the followers of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we accept. There is no difference between Vishnu and Krishna in one sense. Vishnu is only the form of Krishna who appears for the purpose of maintaining the material world. And he has a different mood compared to Krishna. He is more kind of official. Krishna is more playful, sporting by nature. That's the only difference. Otherwise, they are the same personality.
So who is the first?
Krishna is the first. Although, depending on different sampradayas or disciplic successions, others may consider Vishnu as the origin. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter. Krishna and Vishnu are one and the same. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.